Workflow forms will almost certainly be opened by different users at different stages, and it's equally certain that you will want to apply some restrictions to certain fields for certain users at certain stages of the form. One of the more obvious reasons for doing this is controlling who can make approvals. It wouldn't be much of a form if a user could enter and then approve their own request. But there are plenty of other reasons for restricting access to fields on your form too. Applying access rules to your form will allow you to manage this. Before we start to apply any rules though, we should first look at the feature to introduce the important elements of the form designer for this topic. In the navigation panel on the left, there is an Objects Overview section where access and mandatory rules can be applied. During this tutorial, we will focus on the access rules. In this section, there are drop-downs where the different workflow stages and user roles can be selected. This allows us to create specific rules for specific combinations of stages and roles. There is also the option to select all stages and all roles. This allows us to create a general rule which can then be overridden by specific rules applied at the different stage and role combinations. Next, we need to look at the individual object properties. To do this, select an object and in the Properties panel, click to open the Access section. There is a drop-down for the different states that the object can have. It should be noted that not all objects have the same state options, but in this example we can see them all. Starting from the bottom, hidden, of course, means that the object will not be visible. Disabled objects will be visible, but greyed out, and the users won't be able to modify the data. Read-only objects will look normal, but again, the users won't be able to modify the data in them. Normal objects will be visible and can have their data modified by the user. The default state needs a little more explanation. Be aware that in this feature, we are setting the states of objects for when the form instance is opened at a specific stage by a user with a specific role. If we choose the default state, we are simply saying unchanged from the last time that the instance was submitted. Although we will cover this in another tutorial video, the recommended technique for most objects, especially input objects, is to set some type of restriction for all workflow stages and all user roles, and then permit exceptions to this general rule and allow access at the specific stage and role combinations. This type of technique will normally work well for simple and more complex forms. Before we close this tutorial, let's talk about how the workflow stages and user roles are defined, as they are both very important in this feature. The workflow stages are defined in the workflow drawing area, and for each instance, the current stage will change based on the conditions set on the pathways. This topic is covered in the workflow tutorial videos. The user roles are defined in the notify commands, which are usually found on the same workflow pathways. In the General tab of a notification, the role should be defined, and in the Message tab, we will usually have included a link to reopen the form instance. And this link will have the defined role embedded within it. So in this example, when the link is clicked, the system will know that it's the manager reopening the form instance. The combination of current workflow stage and user role will then determine the state of the various objects on the form based on the access rules logic. And that will be covered in another tutorial video.